on how you can use the data. There are kind of different levels that you can use this data, depending on what you're using it for, what you're interested in. So first, to start off with, what is the Collaborative Midterm Survey? Well, this is a large survey funded by the National Science Foundation. And one thing that makes this really interesting, a little bit different, and certainly innovative, is this survey includes data that was collected by 3 different data collection teams. And across these 3 teams, they used 10 different methods of data collection. I'll talk a little bit more about why that is the case and why that's helpful. The total survey has over 19,000 respondents and a little over 200 questions that were asked on this survey on a broad range of topics. So this is a midterm survey. There are plenty of questions there specific to the 2022 midterms, but it goes far beyond that. And there are a lot of questions on a broad range of topics. And we'll talk about that a little more as I continue as well. Some of the goals of the CMS. First of all, just to help understand the 2022 midterm elections, it's important to gain insight and data into these midterm elections in the same way that the ANES and other surveys do for presidential elections. It's important to have that data and understand the electorate for the midterm elections as well, certainly. And that's one thing that this survey provides. Also, to expand our understanding of key segments of the electorate. So this is where the large sample size comes in and is extremely helpful here. Having over 19,000 respondents, and this survey really took an approach of making sure that there is enough of a sample size to look at different subgroups in the population, dig into crosstabs, et cetera. And there's also an oversample of 3 states that you'll see as we go through this data. So just lots of helpful ways that allow you to break this data up, look at different subgroups, which is certainly extremely important in survey research. The third goal, to promote innovative, collaborative, and cost-effective survey strategies. Like I said, 10 different data collection methods, which really help to kind of test these methods against each other, not with the goal of finding one best approach, because we don't necessarily believe that there is just one best approach, but there may be an approach that works best for you given the goals of your research. So having these different methods allows you to kind of look at trade-offs and examine, how these different methods performed in that way. Fourth, to develop a transparent, data-driven, and inclusive framework that allows the assessment of these various survey methods. As you'll see when I walk us through the data that is available and all the documentation that is available, this survey was developed and carried out with transparency in mind. So there is a lot of documentation that you can delve into that will show you exactly how the survey was carried out, even to the extent of showing a series of images where you can see what the survey actually looked like as it was programmed and as people were taking it online. And then the 5th goal, rapid and public dissemination of the results. This data is available to anyone who wants to use it right now, and it has been since, okay. All right, well, thank you everyone for your patience. I will start back right here then. So, as I was mentioning, we are just going through the goals of the CMS here. And I was talking about all these different data collection methods that we have in this survey. And I wanted to throw this table in here because this just shows this in a really clear and interesting way. So you can see here that the 3 organizations involved were SSRS, Gradient, Survey 160, and the University of Iowa. And through these 3 organizations, we have both probability and non-probability samples. And we have everything from online panels to more traditional like phone interviews, and then text message to web, mail to web. So all of these different different methods that are used. And if you go into the data set, you can see which observations, which respondents were contacted using all of these different methods. And this table is taken from the code book, which I'll show you a little later on, and you can delve deeper into that.
Hey, Aaron, would you be so kind as to go into presentation mode to increase the size of your screen?
Yes, thank you for reminding me.
You're very welcome.
Okay, is that working?
Yep, perfect. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, so that's a little more on the data collection mode. And then we talk about how this covers a broad range of topics. So as I mentioned, this is a midterm survey. So it does focus on a lot of questions about the midterm elections, and all those are there. But there's also a broad range of topics here. And this is not all of them, but this is a few of them that I wanted to mention just to kind of give you a sense of the range of topics covered. So there are questions about attitudes towards democracy, questions that ask about attitudes towards race, ethnicity, and gender, attitudes that ask about people's view of the economy and where the economic outlook looking forward. And then there's a whole range of feeling thermometer questions, which some of you all may be very familiar with, but these are questions where usually you ask a respondent to give their kind of feeling toward a group or a institution on a scale from 0 to 100. So this in this survey, there are lots of questions rated on this feeling thermometer scale, both for groups in society and for governing institutions and things like that. And then, of course, a broad range of demographics, anything that you would want to kind of look subgroup by subgroup or in a regression analysis or any of those sorts of things, that is there as well. Then I wanted to just quickly show you what this looks like. I'm going to walk you through how you can create your own visualizations that you could use in your work. And this is the kind of visualization that you can get here. So this is the question: do you consider Joe Biden the rightful winner of the 2020 presidential election? And here you can see the responses broken down by all the response categories. The plurality of voters said that he was definitely the rightful winner, but there's a fairly large percentage saying that he was probably not the rightful winner or definitely not the rightful winner. You get all of those results there. And then if for the feeling thermometer questions, these are the kind of visualizations that you can get. So I thought this was kind of an interesting comparison. These are the responses for two different questions. First, how would you rate the federal government? And then second, how would you rate your local government? Maybe intuitive, but interesting to see that the local government question tends to get much higher scores than the federal government. And you can see that there. So there are kind of different levels that you can use this data at. And after I go through these slides, I'll spend the second portion of the presentation just kind of walking through the different ways that you can use the data and giving some quick demos. But the first thing is the data visualization tool. On the CMS website, you can create visualizations for any question that was asked in the survey. You can look at the overall results, and you can also look into the crosstabs and see how those results break down by different subgroups. And then you can download these as images or the crosstabs as tables that you can then take and use in your own work. Then if you want to delve even another level deeper into this data, we also have the full individual level data set available. Here you can get the full data set along with weighting variables, which I'll explain a little more about in a second. You can also get the questionnaire and the code book that explains everything that you'll be looking at in the data set. And then along with this, we have a lot of documentation for transparency. So that is there as well. All right, and then the last thing I want to call your attention to, which Henry mentioned as well, is the CMS Data Innovation Award. They're going to be awarding up to 10 awards of $500 in 2023. And this is for innovative use of CMS data, and it can be in any sort of research that you're working on. So this might be a conference presentation, an academic article, an op-ed that you're writing, something for your thesis, dissertation, anything like that. You can nominate somebody else's work, you can nominate your own work, and then these will be reviewed on a rolling basis. And the form's available on the website. Henry mentioned the link for that, also show you where that is on the website as I'm taking us through it. And that's the Data Innovation Award.
And if you don't mind, Aaron, I'll interrupt real quickly. I posted the link to the Data Innovation Award here in the chat, so you can find that.
Great.
Aaron, there's a question involving about recruitment, regarding recruitment into the sample. So Philip Muniz asked, did the different modes involve differing levels of recruitment intensity? For instance, were the people recruited mail to web given more messages, more money, encouragement to participate than, for example, the SMS to web people?
Right. Okay. So that's a good question. I don't know the specific answer to that, but I know where to point you to get a lot of information on that. And since we're talking about it, I'll go ahead and pull this up here. So if I share my screen here, so you should be able to find this through, okay. So if you go to the Roper iPoll, this is kind of the home for the full data set. And here, if you go to downloads, then there are a lot of different documents. Like I mentioned, one of the goals here is transparency. So you can actually find things that will give you like the answers to your questions. And I think the thing that would be most useful to get more information on this question will be the methodological summary and usage document. Either that or the overall methodologies document here. And that should have the answer to your question along with a lot of other things. I've looked through this and I know it has information on response rates for all of the different modes. So I would imagine that you could find the answer to your question there. I hope that's helpful. All right. Are there any other questions that we should go over right now? If not, I can move on to the next part.
Nothing so far.
Awesome. Okay, great. All right. So the next thing I wanted to show, I might have to since my internet cut out, I might have to re-download some of these things. Here they are. Okay. So I wanted to just kind of walk through a demo of how you can get access to this data and how you can use it. This will just be service level and the basics, but it should kind of point you to everything that you would need. So the first thing I'm going to show you, this is the Cornell Center for the Social Sciences webpage. If you click on funding and programs here, there's a tab for the CMS. But also if you just Google 2022 Collaborative Midterm Survey, this will be the first thing that pops up. And if you go to the Data Viz tool, then there's a lot of great things that you might want to use in your research that you are working on or anything that you're writing up. The first thing is the top stories tab, and this presents some kind of key findings curated for you. And you can look at them, you can look through them, you can also download some visuals. So this shows attitudes by state for 3 questions. Is your state on the right or wrong track? Question about background checks for gun purchases, and then should abortion be legal? And if you hover over a certain state, it will give you the data for that state. You can also look question by question. And then if you click on the 3 bars here, then you can download these images for you to use. Same thing for these. These are some of the feeling thermometer questions that are curated for you here. And then you can look at these by different subgroups. So this is how would you rate people who breached the Capitol on January 6th? And then you can look at how that breaks down for all respondents, but then also Democrats, much lower, independents, and then Republicans quite a bit higher, as we might expect, but you can see that there. And you can break these questions down by different demographic groups. Also has this for how you would rate supporters of Black Lives Matter, how you would rate billionaires, and how you would rate Congress. So all of that's there. And that's kind of just selected findings, selected questions. If you want to get a visualization for absolutely any question that was asked in the survey, then you can go into this dig into the results tab. And here, like I mentioned, you can get all of the questions. So you'd start off by this topics tab, questions about the election, attitudes towards democracy, et cetera, and you can see all the different kinds of questions there. Just to show us something that we haven't looked at before, I'll go to economic views. And then once you click on a topic, then you'll see the questions on that topic here. You can select all of them, which is the default, or just look at one of the questions or two of the questions at a time. And then the results show up here. So this first question on the economy is, would you say that over the past year, the nation's economy has either gotten worse, gotten better, et cetera? You can see all of the options. And then what you can do with each of these questions is you can download either a PNG or a JPEG of the overall results to use this visualization that you see here. Or if you scroll down, then this is where you can see all of the crosstabs. So they have crosstabs for the states that were oversampled, which are California, Florida, and Wisconsin. They have oversamples for in the data. You can see crosstabs by education, by gender, by Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, by family income, by race, and finally by partisanship. And then for each of these crosstabs, if you just want this data in an easily to use format, then you can click right here and you can download a table, and it'll just give you a spreadsheet that has all of this data that you can then turn into your own visualization, turn into a table in the research that you're working on, anything that you need. And then if you scroll down, we see the other questions on the economy, and you have all of those same options there. So that's how the data visualization tool works. And like I said, you can use this for any topic. Here are the feeling thermometer questions. And then you can see there's 18 different feeling thermometer questions. You can get the results for all of those, etc. And then the last thing I'll point to here, this is the Data Innovation Award tab on the CMS website. And this gives you all the information that you would need on the awards and the link to nominate. So you can find all of that here as well. All right, so then the last thing that I'll do is just show you the full data set and where all the information is on the full data set. So if you scroll down, you can find this just through the iPoll archive. But also if you scroll down to the end of, oh, sorry, it's not on this tab. If you're on the data visualization tool, and then you scroll down to the bottom of all the answers, there's a lot of these. Then you'll see these buttons at the bottom. Click to access the code book and the data summary, or click to access the individual level data. I'll click on this now just to show us. So this is what I had pulled up before. And I'll just show you. So study info will give you all of the basic info, but then downloads is probably where you will want to go and spend most of your time. So here you can download the full data set in multiple file formats, SPSS, Stata, CSV, ASCII, etc., along with all the associated documentation. So that should have everything that you need there. And then the other thing that I'll show, and this will just kind of be the last thing before we wrap up and save time for questions. This is the code book, and I just kind of wanted to point out a couple of things in here. First is the weighting variables. This is something that I'm certainly not an expert in. There are lots of different weighting variables here, but what I would want to know, and probably what many of you would want to know, is, okay, for most people in most circumstances, what is the weighting variable that I'm going to want to use that weights the data based on population estimates? So this section here goes through all the weighting variables, and this first one, under the variables you want to use when you're analyzing the full data set, joint to weight national. This is for national adult estimates when you are using the entire data set. So like I said, for most people in most circumstances, this is going to be the way that you want to weight the data. This is in line with the demographic and party ID targets based on the US population. So just wanted to point that out there so you can look for that in the data set when you are there. All right, so I will stop sharing my screen for now and then open it up for questions. Any questions that I have that you all have, I'll certainly do my best to answer or point you to the place where you can get the answers. So.
All right, I'm just going to go through and unmute everybody in this way that you all can just simply ask any questions you may have. Also, feel free to ask them in the Q&A and type them if you want while somebody else is talking. Unmute. I have a quick question, Aaron. The question that came to my mind was, who decided what states to oversample?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'm actually not sure how they came to that decision. But the states that are oversampled, like I mentioned, are California, Florida, and Wisconsin. So just based on that choice, you can see that we have some diversity in what those states are like politically and how they normally like to vote. Also regional diversity from three different basically, like three different corners of the country in some ways. So I would imagine that those were at least some of the considerations, but I don't know the specifics on how those decisions were made.
So right now I don't have any written questions. Anybody who wants to is free to unmute your microphone and ask a question of Aaron.
And if we don't have any questions right now, or if people are still thinking, to give people a little more time to think, I can walk us through one more thing that I was going to share if we had time. So maybe that would be helpful at this moment. And that was, yeah, here it is. Just to show quickly what the data set looks like in Stata. Because I know for some people, you may, I'm sure plenty of people here have lots of experience using a data set in Stata or in R or whatever software you are most familiar with. But if this is something that seems a little intimidating, but that you would want to do, just to kind of, make it not seem like so much of a mystery. So when we open up the data in Stata, you can see here, you have pretty much everything you need right away. So in this variables tab, you have a list of all of the variables. And this is not the case in every data set that you open up, but here everything is really nicely labeled so that it's easy to use. So here is that weighting variable that I was talking about, joint to weight national, that you would use to weight the data based on those national benchmarks. And then most of the survey questions are just labeled right through here, question 1, question 2, question 5, question 6. And then the labels have, the full text of the question. In which state do you live? In what year were you born, etc. So you'll want to go to the code book for a lot of the details, a lot of the specifics, but also a lot of that is right here in the data set. And then I've tabbed the state question right here. So you can just see all the information that you have. As we mentioned, California, Florida, and Wisconsin all have more than 3,000 respondents. Those are the ones that are oversampled. And so you have a lot of respondents in those three states if you're interested in diving deeper into that. All right, so I'll stop sharing that, but that's just a little more about the data set.
So there's a question, oops, I am unmuted. There's a question about plans for continuing the survey for future elections, midterm or otherwise.
Yeah, another good question. I am not entirely sure. The PIs on the project would be probably better able to answer that about their future plans. As I know, this data just came out in January, so that might be something that they are considering now. But I do know from the information that I've gotten from them about the survey that they certainly hope that this sort of framework for different data collection methods, then allowing us to kind of examine the trade-offs between those methods, that they hope that this will become something that helps kind of advance the science of public opinion polling and something that kind of becomes a part of that science moving forward. So that's what I at least can say for now. Awesome. Well, hopefully this was helpful. Thank you all for sticking with us through the technical difficulties. Sorry about that. Yeah, happy to share any more info. If people have questions, feel free to get in touch. And I'll definitely help however I can. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us here at the Roper Roundtable. If you do have questions, have any information that you want to share, or if there's anything that we can answer for you, feel free to contact us through the Roper website and the Contact Us button. We'd be glad to get that information back to you as fast as we can. Otherwise, have a great afternoon and look forward to seeing you at an event in the near future. Take care, everyone. And this ends this presentation right now.